Well, Cindy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm excited. It's a great
I'm
conversation.
ex- I'm excited too. So we're calling you the sober sexpert, which is a fun little name that we've been giving you. But you actually have a master's in human sexuality, is that right?
I do. I do. My undergrad and my master's are both in health education, and I did specialized in sexuality education. So, yeah, super fun topic and great party opener as well to tell people that you do that for sure.
No, that's awesome. And listen, in all seriousness, it's such an important topic when it comes to relating to sobriety because a lot of people feel like, that alcohol is actually a big part of their sex life. It helps them get in the mood, it helps them not be self conscious, and all kinds of things. So, we're going to do a little bit of dispelling some myths, and we're actually going to be answering some questions. I had actually reached out to several people to talk, say, hey, several women's groups. And I'm like, hey, what are your questions for the sober sexpert? And what struck me was the frequency and the repetitiveness of like the same five things. People have issues around libido and self consciousness and things like that. And what is not out there is a lot of practical solutions. So, what I thought we would do is we can go over some of the questions that I've received. I'll have you answer and provide some practical advice, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation leads us.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's important to note that, for the people who are listening, I not only, we touched on my background in human sexuality. So that's what I've done for 20 plus years is worked with clients. And then I entered the field of recovery. So I myself am almost 4 years sober. And so that's what kind of bridged the gap for those two for me. So I know some people were like, wait, why is she talking about this? What makes her a sober sexpert? It's just my years of training in sexuality and working in that field. And then when I entered the field of recovery and got my coaching certification, I felt like there were a lot of conversations that were just kind of under the table, hush hush, about sex and relationships. And I didn't see a lot of conversations publicly, and there weren't a lot of materials, any literature, books that have been written, audio, podcasts. There hadn't been a lot at the time. So that's what kind of opened the door for me to kind of be able to think about, well, if I'm struggling and this is, I talk about sex for a living, what are other women feeling? What are other men feeling? So that's kind of how I got into this field. So I know people ask that. And so I just wanted to preface that too before we begin.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really important. And, just the context of being sober. And, it hasn't been that far away. Like I've been sober a really long time. So I sort of I didn't have anything. I didn't have any of this. And as I've aged, I've hit menopause, I've had babies, I've, gone through the, having that experience of the pendulum swinging, where before I got into recovery, I was like I felt like this little sex kitten thing and feeling good about like the mechanics of it and everything. And then as I got older, like having kids and then actually like getting sober and feeling secure about myself, like the libido kind of waning. And then, as I have gotten older, yeah, things have definitely changed, and it's,
Yeah.
it's been interesting. So I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about all this.
Just excited.
So I did get some questions. So I thought what we would do is I would just read off one of the questions that I had that somebody wrote to me, and
Okay.
then we can sort of hit on some other bullet sort of topics. So this one was submitted anonymously. We're calling her Lady Number One. So her question was, I'd like to know anonymously how the sexual dynamic typically changes between partners when both partners become sober. So the context is her and her boyfriend have been sober for 4 years and had a very exciting and vigorous sex life pre-sobriety. Post-sobriety, it has radically changed. It has decreased in frequency, playfulness, passion, and also experimentally. It's the, let's see, I think my contact is inside out. Sorry. It's he that's changed, and I have a hard time not taking it personally. We've talked about it, and he shares that it is not for a lack of desire and love, and he is more in love with her than ever before, and their sexuality has more depth now, which is probably true. However, she says, I miss it, and I worry that those 4 short years will be the only sexually exciting time of her life. She cherishes this man, but this part has her very unsettled. He's been sober for 7 months. She's been sober for 3 months, and she really wants it to work between us. So I think there's a lot sort of in between, that we can read between the lines of what's going on, like maybe validation through sex and things like that. But at first blush, what comes up for you when you hear that?
Well, I think that, when I hear people say those things to me, I think we have to honor that there's nothing normal to this, right? So when we have these conversations, it really is about leaning into each other and listening. Like, that's what I found. Women just wanted to hear that they weren't alone. And this was even conversations outside of sobriety. Like, so when I would counsel women on their relationships, it would be, wait, other people feel the same way? Like, somebody with this? Like, so it's almost a sense of validation that we get from each other. Now, what I found in the recovery community is that it's almost more intense because we're grasping for so much. Some people have therapists, some people are going to group recovery programs, some people have large group recovery programs, some people are just doing it on their own. And so because there's such a variety of approaches to recovery, that means that all the conversations are completely different too. And so by hearing what she has stated in her question, she's concerned about her partner. So that's twofold right there. So like, there's your own sobriety, and then there's your partner. Like, so if you're going through a sober time, you're sober curious, you're both new into sobriety, you have to really be careful to not take on your partner's sobriety as well and the feelings that they're having. And so she did speak a lot for him. And I'd be interested to see if those are really truly his feelings. Like, is he saying that to her to calm her down, to appease any concerns that she might have? I don't know. That's the fun thing about, questions like this, because you're not really sure what the other side truly is. But just based on what she said, they're both trying, and I think that is amazing, especially when you're doing sobriety together. And so I just want to actually give her, applaud her and give her a little bit of encouragement. Like, you know what, you're doing a great job. Know that there's no path for this that's like written out in detail, right? We don't have instructions. We don't have directions on how to do these things. And so just knowing that you're not alone feels super important to me. And recovery is, it's almost like the purpose of recovery is very similar to sex in this, that like, you just have to find out who you are. And if you've been drinking or using for so many years to suppress feelings, to numb out, to get in the mood, there are deeper issues there. And I think you and I both know that, and I think many people in your audience know that, so that's where therapy comes in, that's where coaching comes in. So usually when that's been happening, you've been suppressing something. And so those are things that you're going to have to work on. And that's I think for me is the beautiful thing about recovery is, people like, oh, it's all these emotions. It's great, because now you're having to feel all of it. Yeah, they're tough. It's anger, it's sadness. It can be depressing for you. Like, but it's also, you're not numbing it out. And that's what you've done for so long. And so when you throw sex and relationships into that, it really kind of puts a new lens on your relationships for sure. So I want to applaud her. I would like to give her some practical advice, which I'm sure you and I will get into. But, it's really just, she's got to focus on herself and figure out what she wants, what pleasures her. Why was she drinking? These are some big questions to ask yourself, as you're going through the recovery process. Like, when did I drink the most? Did I drink before sexual behavior? Things like that. So that's why those would be important for her to answer, and, really spend some quality time thinking about, for sure.
One of the things that she mentioned that really stuck out to me was this idea of like playfulness,
Mm-hmm.
experimenting, you know, and first of all, I was like, "Oh, what did you used to do that you don't do now?" You know, it's like,
Right.
why aren't you doing the things that like what was it about her past experience that made it fun? Was it just like cuz I know alcohol, it's like it's just total self-abandonment basically, like abandoning yourself to the moment maybe, like not being
Mm-hmm.
self-conscious, but I
Yeah.
in my mind I was like, "Well, what were you doing before that was so fun that you can't do now?" Like you know what I'm saying?
Right. Like, was she losing her inhibitions for
Inhibitions,
and we
yes.
know that about alcohol, right? Like, we know, like,
Yeah.
chemically what it does to us. Like, it's a surge really quick. And then, what happens after that? And it drops fast. And so then you drink a little more and then it drops again. And so, things that may have appeared fun, again, I would ask her, what were you doing? And how much were you consuming during those times? So let's, I don't want to get too risque, but like maybe she was, maybe they were playing with bondage or something. I don't know. Like whatever was fun for them. Um, did she have to get? Did she have to drink a certain amount or use a certain amount in order to get to that place where her inhibitions were low enough that then felt fun? But was it really fun? And so those, and again, like those are things we can't answer for her.
Right.
There may have been exciting times, but that doesn't mean that there can't be more exciting times, but they're just going to look a little bit different. They're going to feel a little different because guess what? You can feel a hell of a lot more now
Yes.
than you can when you were drinking. Like your senses are just exposed. And so
Right.
that's the great thing about it. So it might just look, that fun might look a little different, or you might have to find new ways to have that fun, whatever that might be.
Yeah, so it sounds like maybe she can sort of identify what was fun. And you mentioned specifically like bondage, and I know, I mean, I don't feel shy about, you know, there's toys, there's role playing, there's I don't know if sex in public is a good idea, but like like I mean, I don't know. When I was younger maybe, but like being outdoor like or being having sex in a place that you don't normally have it, like the bedroom, it's like that's like,
Yeah.
you know, that gets a little bit routine, but like having sex somewhere else at a hotel.
Yeah, yeah, and that gets into, like, I think another one of our questions that comes up a lot is like, how do I get in the mood now? And
Oh
so
yeah, that's a good
we could
one.
definitely touch on it, but I think for them specifically, like, where did that fun happen, right? And
Fair.
so
Okay.
where was that? Was it, you know, I have a client with a very similar situation, and she would say, we always had amazing sex. Okay, well, where was it? She goes, well, when we felt like super excited, we go to the basement. And I'm like, okay, like, what? I don't know what her basement was like. I don't know what was in there. I don't know what they did. Like, it wasn't like she went down to the basement because they had a bunch of props and stuff. It was
Okay.
just that I think it was dark. It was away from the kids. It was actually like they reserved it for that time. And so I feel like we do connect in our minds, we connect these moments to our situation and our setting. So maybe don't go down to the basement for a while. Maybe let's try some new places that you can now have sexual relations with your partner. Maybe that's something like, and like you said, like finding new and fun things. I would say this to anybody who's not even in recovery, like when this relationship starts to get stale and there's, I mean, it happens to everyone. We could remove sobriety out of here. And it's the same exact conversation. It is find something new, introduce maybe some sex toys, have that conversation, have the open conversation, but have it, for her specifically, you know, I would, talk with him, have these open conversations, but not in a finger pointing kind of way. Like, I feel like my needs aren't getting met. I feel like don't do the I statements. Like, how are you feeling about us? Like, what would you like to do to try to spice it up? It's amazing once you ask men, in particular, and I say this because, she referred to her partner as a male. Like, when you ask them, and you ask them in a very calm way, like not in a, I feel like,
and not in the middle of actually having sex. That's a bad time to have this discussion.
This is over coffee and muffins, or I don't even know what it is, but it's, it's just the two of you, and just like, let's have a little, conversation. We only tend to talk about sex in the heat of the moment, or when we're pissed off,
right,
and something has happened, or we, like when there's anger involved. But if you're just casually having a conversation, let's just do a check-in. Like, that's what, I love to suggest people do a check-in. And, we check in about our goals. And people are like, oh, big goal setting with my partner. We always sit down every Saturday, first Saturday of every month. And I don't do this, but like you do that, like, let's have this goal set, and like, here's what I want to accomplish for the next month, or how's our budget, how are our kids doing. But we don't sit and talk about how's our intimacy, how can we improve our relationship, am I helping you meet your needs, what more can we do together, what would you like to do a little bit different, what do you feel, my frequency, we're not having enough sex, we're having too much sex, we're not having intimate sex. You could decrease the frequency, but those moments that you do have are a lot more intense. That can change a relationship too. So definitely having some of those conversations.
I like it was kind of interesting what you said, frequency and intensity. Right.
Yeah.
And, you're right. You can have totally detached, just get her done kind of quickie, whatever, but still leave the evening feeling empty and unfulfilled. If it's just like the mechanics, right?
Absolutely. Like, I want to check this box. Like, I know my partner likes to have sex, 10 times a month. And so, we're on number 6 and it's the 28th of the month. I'm going to hurry it up. Like those, like, when you think of it methodically like that, we all know there's no passion in that. But if you're creating the moments, and this is the other thing about having that, like, that lower libido, and you feel like your libido has been changed by alcohol and you're in this period, it's really about having that conversation and letting them know, this is not about you. Okay, so this right now are my feelings. As you know, I'm newly sober. I am feeling all the feels. As you witnessed yesterday, I cried after the grocery store because I successfully made it through the grocery store, down that wine aisle to get some bread, and I'm amazing. But then I got in the car and I cried. Okay. Yeah. So as you know, I have these variety of emotions right now. So I just need you to just be patient with me and know this is not about you. When you set your partner off the hook like that, when you let them know that it's not about them, and you truly have to mean that. Now, if you really have a hang up with them, be honest about it. But most of us are just like, I'm dealing with all of these different things right now. Like, just be patient with me. And I think that opens up trust, and it just lets them in on your recovery process for sure. Because women tend to, we tend to internalize it, but we also want to talk to our community. Okay. And so in recovery, as you have probably found, like, we'll talk to women and we'll have this moment. And this is even outside of recovery. Like, we talk, like, we'll want to talk to our girlfriend and get their advice. But when you include your partner in that, and not everything, but when you include them with it and be very open and honest with them, it really creates this, to me, what I witness is a beautiful level of trust, as long as your partner is open to hearing that and receiving that information, for sure.
Yeah. So you touched on one of the next questions that came up over and over again when I was asking women, what is your question? What is your biggest problem? Libido, lack of libido was probably the number one thing. And I thought that was so interesting because libido, it can be tied to an age group. Like, if you're in menopause like I am, and my libido totally took a nosedive when I went through menopause. And,
and most women it does.
Yeah. And I quit a long time ago. So it wasn't, but what I understand is, like, women that are my age who just quit they're like, what happened? Like this one woman told me that her husband communicated with her and was like almost liked you better when you were drinking because you were more frisky. And I felt so sad for her because I don't think he realized what he was saying to her. Right. It's like, I liked you better when you were miserable, addicted to alcohol. Like, I don't think he really believes that, but it made me
Thank you,
sad
but
for
don't
her.
ever say that to me again. Thank you so much. I hear that. It
Yeah.
hurts. Don't say that to me again, is what I would say. But I'm like,
Yeah. Just draw that boundary right quick.
yeah.
Tough to do early in recovery if you have boundary issues. But yeah, lack of libido was like the number one thing I kept hearing over and over again. And I think when you add alcohol, because it's a depressant, it's an anesthetic, like you don't, like you're numb, you're physically numb and you're emotionally numb. And in my mind, I'm like, how do you even know what feels good on your body? If to me, if it sounds like more of an external validation thing. Like before I quit drinking, I used sex for validation.
Okay.
Right. Like that's how I received love and validation, was through sex. And then, later when I got into a real intimate relationship with somebody who really loved me, I was like, oh, I can stop performing now.
It
Which
is. It's
wasn't
a performance.
right. Yeah. It can be a performance. And
Yeah.
so you get some validation that way. And so I think letting go of the alcohol, letting go of the performance, letting go of the external like receiving love through that kind of validation, it can feel like sex is no longer as satisfying. But everything that you just said about, when you're not drinking, you actually feel everything even more.
Yeah.
And like in the first question from the lady, she was saying that her partner was expressing that he feels even closer to her, but she wasn't quite feeling it.
And
How
that's
do,
okay. That's okay. Like,
yeah.
I think that's okay. And I think what I would say to her, and I'll say to people newly in recovery is, you're not even sure what you like.
Right.
So by expecting your partner to, and it doesn't sound like she's doing this, but it kind of rolls into this next little part about like, we assume that our partner should know. And that was, again, touching on that communication piece. I'm feeling
Right.
all of these feels. I'm not really sure. And then I think along with that open communication is also letting them know, this is, and I'll say this for a personal story for myself, like, I almost always had a glass of wine or two or something before I was intimate with my partner. And I'm divorced as well. So I will say this, even previous relationships, like, it just came hand in hand. Like that's
Yeah.
just, and I'm not taking, I take responsibility of that for sure. And that's also what marketing and advertising have taught us for years too. Like, it's romantic. You're a free spirit. You're fun loving. Like that's what you do to get in the mood. I mean, I see all those commercials now and I'm always like, and that's what was drilled into my head. And I actually taught people that. So part of my sex, coaching, I sold sex toys. And so I would encourage people like to get in the mood, make sure you have a shot of tequila before, like I'm
Wow.
so guilty of that. And I did that professionally. I told people that. I taught consultants in a company to teach to sell products that way. Like I was the sales 101. Like, you want all your guests there to be liquored up before they buy your products. And so knowing that now, which has made me, the place I'm in now, I had to have a very honest conversation. And it was not immediately after I quit drinking. It wasn't 2 days later, like, all right, let's have this conversation. Let me tell you about how sex has affected me. It took a while because I noticed whenever we were intimate that I was like, the lights are too bright, the music's too loud, I hear the dog barking, I think one of our kids just pulled up in the driveway. Like I was hypersensitive to everything.
Okay.
And
Distracted? Did you feel distracted?
oh, I was the worst. I was like, I think there's a spider crawling on the wall over there. Do you see that little, like, it was nothing.
So not present in your body.
my God, no. And maybe alcohol did that for me. I'm pretty sure I feel like it did that for me. Like it just made me like, who cares what's going
Who
on? I'm here.
cares?
And so now I'm just super aware of everything. And
Yeah.
so it took us several months to be able to have that conversation like okay, so here's my history. Here is what I'm piecing together. And I was journaling through this whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And my recovery process was, I was engaged in communities online. I was reading a ton. I just immersed myself completely. And the more I read other women were in very similar situations, I was like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, there's just this big sigh of relief, which is why, recovery programs all look differently, because sometimes it's what is it that's going to connect for you? And for me, that
Right.
was it. So once I got that affirmation of you're not alone, other people have felt it this way, I was able to be really honest with him and say, what I've realized is that almost every time we've been intimate in the past, I always had like a glass of wine, even if it was in the morning, I didn't, but that didn't happen like that. I think I just ran with it and did whatever. But, if it was anything after 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, sometimes, whatever, like I felt like that was necessary for me to get into the mood. But to have that conversation and be that vulnerable, I mean, to me, recovery equals vulnerability. You're vulnerable with yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you are in a relationship, you're vulnerable with your partner. And a lot of times my kids are teenagers, they're older teenagers. I've had to be vulnerable with them, and not to an extent that I expose too much, but I also had to be very vulnerable with them. Like, look, here's where I messed up as a mom, not failed, but here's where I messed up as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the things that I have done in the past. And so I want to be fully present for you now. So it's this vulnerability conversation that you have. So for me to be vulnerable with my partner and say, this is what, I mean, he was blown away. He was like, wait, what? He was completely oblivious. Like, really? You did? I didn't know that. Like, I thought for sure he must have known. He never did. So, be able to have those, if you can have those conversations, it's not going to happen week number 1, week number 2. If it does, fabulous. If it's 3 months down the road, 4 months down the road, great. If it hasn't happened after a year, get on it. Like, let's do it. Like, you need to have that
Yeah. I
conversation.
mean, you could even pull in a professional and
Absolutely.
get some help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So being distracted made me think of, okay, so if you're distracted, you're not really in the present moment. And I think the real big question is, how do I get in the mood? Do you have any like
Yes.
practical advice? Like, how do I get in the mood?
Yeah, I think practically, and that's where, that's what I love, is like to be able to, to talk to women about, okay, let's just get real for a moment. Like,
Please.
tell me what it is that's not working for you. Tell me where you're having sex, what room in the house, what time of day, what do you like? I don't know what I like. Like, I'm not really sure. That's perfect. You are now like writing a new chapter in your book, your intimacy book, or your life. And that is the intimacy chapter, like you get to explore these things and find these new things and be okay with what worked in the past may not work in the future for you. Like, being in, a certain room may not be the best thing for you. So I'm like one with glass windows, like if you loved like, slightly being exposed and maybe someone could see you and the neighbors, you had the curtains were wide open, and the thought that
Yeah.
if the neighbor saw you was like, it's so exciting for you. And it's not now. Super cool. Draw the drapes. Like, it doesn't matter. Pull the shades down, make the room dark. I think we also get, and men too, we worry about how our body looks, how our body smells, how our body tastes. And then when you add alcohol on top of it, or any other substance like that kind of like can really alter that sense. You're like, I don't really care. Like, I'm amazing. Like, I am super hot. But when you're not doing that, you're like, do I look okay? Like, I've gained a little bit of weight. How many forums? Oh my goodness, Arlene, how many times do we see posts about women waiting? They haven't lost that weight yet. Like, they quit drinking and they're still waiting to lose those 15 pounds. Like, that's not a given in sobriety that you're going to automatically like shed pounds. If you
No, as a
do,
matter of fact, some of the women I've been talking to are saying, I've gained a bunch of weight since I got into sobriety. I think that has to do with like switching addictions.
sure, maybe,
Right.
maybe it doesn't. Maybe you don't, maybe you're not obsessing about it as much as you were. Maybe,
Right.
we all approach it differently. Maybe, yeah, you're consuming more sugar now. Guess what? You're sober. Like the second someone
Right.
rips me on, gaining weight, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm sober and my liver looks amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I might be 15 pounds overweight, but run a test on my liver and it's so good. So, I think we do get consumed about the body, like our body image. So
Right.
yes, body image, the way we look, the way we feel.
Right.
Again, it's sometimes in early recovery, we're very sensitive to touch.
Okay.
And so where you might have loved being cuddled earlier and held and your hair stroked, like that was a beautiful thing to you. If you're hypersensitive to know that that's okay, like, don't, like you cringe the thought of that, guess what? Because all your nerves, everything's much more exposed now.
Right.
So, but have that conversation with your partner and let them know like, okay, maybe a little bit less caressing right now. Give me some time. It's okay to have that conversation. If you're worried about the way you look, like turn off the lights in the room. Like
Yeah.
light some candles. Everybody looks, we all look amazing in candlelight. Like, I mean, why do we have filters? Like, can people have filters? Like, if you're really, like, if that is distracting you from being connected, intimate with your partner,
Yeah.
because it's super bright in the room, and even if you haven't gained weight, even if you've lost weight, but you're seeing all the bulges and the bumps now, and you're worried that your stomach's not as flat as it was, or turn off the lights. I say that to anybody. Just turn off the lights, light a
Start
candle,
there.
start there. If you're sensitive to noise, you're hypersensitive to anything around you, turn some music on, and really start to think about all those different senses. Your smell. Like I have a couple clients who they were very concerned about the way they smelled and the way they tasted.
Vaginal odor, is that what we're talking about?
Vaginal odor, underarm. They were also slightly turned off by the way their partner smelled. Like it didn't matter to them before, but boy, can we just, can we clean up a little bit before we have sex?
A little manscaping, a little splishy splash.
But whatever it is, maybe let's have a fun shower first, like let's I mean, trick them if you have to for a little bit. Like maybe that's not you don't want to go about first like, okay, so I really smell you now and you really reek. Like it's not that. I'm not saying be that honest yet.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, let's run a bath. Let's take out, and let's get cleaned up. And if they're like, whoa, a bath, like, I really need to relax first. Wink, wink,
Yeah.
Like whatever it is. But, try all these different fun things now. Like know that it's, hop up and clean yourself up right afterwards if you know that you're sensitive to smell or to taste and things like that. So for sure.
Yeah. I was thinking, what I'm hearing is, being super sensitive, it's like we need to feel safe, right? Like we go from this like place of complete abandon where you don't care.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden you're sober and then you're overwhelmed by distraction. Like you're in your head, not your body. Right.
Yeah.
So getting out of your head, like, like getting all the dishes done. I remember this one lady saying the sexiest thing her husband could do for her is to do the dishes. So she's not like stressed out about stuff that has to get done. She's not so exhausted because she's been chasing after the kids and cleaning the house and stuff. That was another thing that affected libido, is what I was hearing, is that at the end of the day, like women are just exhausted. They're just not even interested, and their minds are so like overwhelmed with everything that, processing everything that happened during the day, that they're so in their mind that they have a hard time, transitioning to getting into their body. And I love what you said about like setting the stage, turning down the lights, turning on the music, turning on lighting the candles, and really setting the stage so that she can transition from, it's not just like taking a drink. That's a shortcut to the transition.
That was the easy button, right? Wasn't
Right.
it? That was the easy button.
that was the easy button. But now it takes a little more thoughtfulness and intention. So set the stage, allow your body to transition, get out of your head and into your body and be in the moment. To me, a lot of sexuality is about being present in the moment and being really in tune with your partner, which is so interesting because when you're loaded, you're not in tune with your partner at all, right? You're just,
you think you
you
are.
think you are, but you're not. I mean, how
Ask
can you be? Because you're not feeling, your emotions are depressed, it's an
right.
anesthetic, you actually can't. I remember the first time I ever got drunk, I remember falling down and thinking, oh, this doesn't even hurt. It was like, and people do that on TV. It's like when the guy has to get an arrow taken out of him, they say, take a big swig of booze first. It's like an anesthetic. Oh, did I lose you?
Froze for a second. Are you good?
Okay.
I'm
Good.
here.
Awesome.
Okay. Are we good?
I
Okay.
lost you for a second, but
Yeah.
yeah, just like that the booze is an anesthetic. So we're transitioning to being fully present, setting the stage and really, being present with your partner.
Absolutely. And that situation you said about the dishes, that's every relationship, right? So, I mean, not every, most relationships outside of recovery. So, that is the same. Those were the things I heard for years from women. It's just that same thing. Like I have too much on my plate. My mind's too busy. How do I get in the mood? And it sounds so cliche and so simple. This whole like just set the setting and make the mood happen. But what we are champions of, because we're amazing in sobriety, is like we can't hit the easy button. So we're going to create a new easy button. We're going to create a new safe space. And again, having that conversation with our partner. And I think setting also too, Arlena, when you said that, like, it's really about creating that expectation. We may not have an orgasm tonight. I may not have an orgasm. You may not have an orgasm. That's okay. Be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just be okay with it. Sometimes it's just really about intimacy and connecting.
Right.
And that is the biggest endorphin rush that can beat an orgasm any day. And so you may be setting the mood, but don't focus on this end result is we're going to have this most amazing sex and I'm going to have 3 orgasms and you're going to have 2. And like, don't quantify it at all. Just, we're going to connect. And if that leads to us having an orgasm, you having one, me having one, I don't know, but don't put a measure on it. Because that can really mess with our minds because we're already kind of overthinking it.
Yeah, what a great point to just set aside some time to make the other person feel good, to experiment with your own body to see what feels good and not have that expectation of an orgasm. That feels like a lot of pressure, which puts you right back into your head.
Well, and I think too, and this is something I meant to bring up earlier, is like, if we're expecting our partner to know like what feels good to us, if we as an individual have not had an orgasm without a substance, 95% of the time, you really need to spend some time with yourself and your body, because you can't get ticked off at your partner because he doesn't know what he's doing, or he's not helping you, or he's not doing it for you, or you're not having an orgasm if you can't do it yourself. And so that's like
take matters into your own hands, ladies.
Really, or a toy, whatever. Like, that's just number 1. So like, you can set the mood and all that. Set the mood for yourself. Like, send him out of the house with the kids, whatever. And you have some time by yourself. You create that moment. You try lighting some candles, turning on some music, and pull out the toy, do it yourself, like whatever it takes, read some erotica. Like, it's easy if I'm not going to research anything on Google. Like, oh, I don't want that popping up. Fine. Go find an erotic. I mean, they're easy to order on Amazon. They're easy to get from the bookstore. It's
God bless the internet.
It's mild, nothing, I'm not saying go get some big porn book, but I'm saying, get some, especially if you're a visual person, there's great books out there that are just beautifully done pictures of couples together with, that might be what needs to switch in your mind, just to see that. And, it could be watching a video if you want. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
No judgment.
No judgment. I'm giving you all the resources. I'm telling you these things exist. Do you know, most women, a lot of women don't know that these things even exist. Wait, you can buy a book with just like pretty pictures of couples together. And I'm like, yeah, like, and that can be enough. Just starting your mind onto maybe a fantasy. And a lot of people get really concerned, like, oh, a fantasy. But then when I get with my partner, he'll know. No, if you want to tell him about it, great. If you don't, not a big deal. You know, if it makes your mind get distracted, and you play a story in your mind because you've seen a beautiful picture of a couple together that were, that we're having an intimate moment, and that helps you, go for it.
Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't mind.
Right. We don't know. Yeah. I'm sure he wouldn't.
Like, men are a lot less fussy.
Yeah. I mean, some of them could get a little, we always have to be careful, they might get a little jealous, or maybe some envy there. Like, wait, you were looking at another man, or you were looking at, oh, wait, you know
your man, you know your partner. If you have a jealous partner, maybe you don't share that thing.
Right. There's like, a lot of women and will tell me that they'll say, I personally don't want to be in a relationship with another woman. However, I really like looking at pictures of two women together. Like, I think that's super cool. They'll say that. What does that mean? I'm like, well, you need to stop worrying about the labels. And if that's what gets you, if you need to see that and that gets you in some lovely space, and you can go for it. Like, there's no right or wrong to this. Don't worry about this label and how it's going to affect you and your husband or anything like that. If that helps, whatever. Just like if a man, if he sees pictures of two women together, oh my God, does that mean that he wants to bring another woman into our relationship? We've really got to like lower that sensitivity level down a little bit. Just think of it as something of erotica to try to get you in the mood.
It seems like in those of us who've had like maybe more interesting past, it's like fantasy and reality very rarely, very rarely are matched.
And a picture is safe.
And a picture doesn't have herpes.
That was so good. That was really good.
Yeah, pictures don't have herpes.
Yes.
Picture can't get you pregnant.
Yeah.
No, those are really good tips. Okay, so libido, as it turns out, so I want to go back to that one just a little bit, because I think what you were talking about, lowering the expectation of an orgasm, I think that kind of lets you off the hook, a little bit. It's like, and I used to joke around with my husband. It's like, we raise kids together and everything. And sometimes I would be like, well, I might not be present at the beginning of the party, but I'll join somewhere along the line. But it was like, oh, I don't have like this expectation that I have to have an orgasm. Like, if you're happy and you get what you need, that's cool. I'm fine with that. Like, I just didn't need to finish the way he did. And everybody was fine with that.
Right.
Like, nobody cares. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. Just, if we get there, great. If we don't, guess what?
I ain't mad about it. Like, if you're not mad, I'm not mad.
We have the next day. Your endorphins will shoot up. You'll be excited for a while. And your body needs to kind of relearn that a little bit too. It needs to relearn, this is what it's going to feel like without alcohol. This is what a natural endorphin high feels like. Some people get that mad rush when they go work out, right? I don't. I'm just kidding. Some people really get that big. Like, I don't get it at 2 miles, but if I run 10 miles, my endorphins are high. It varies for everybody. And it's like, it goes back to that question, like, when will I get my libido back? Like, when will it be? Like, because I'm waiting. It's been a couple of weeks. For some people it is a couple of weeks. For some people it's months. It depends on how, like, everybody's chemistry is. It depends on if you're in menopause. It depends on if you are newly, if some people who are just had a baby, right? So their hormones are all out of whack. Like, it's just so different from everyone. And if you're truly, like, if you're feeling like something's off balance, I always encourage you to go see your doctor.
Go to the doctor.
Have you run a blood panel? Have you checked out your hormone levels? Have you checked out your thyroid? Like, get those base levels done, especially in sobriety. I went to the doctor So I didn't go to the doctor for a long time. And I went about 2 years after my sobriety, after I stopped drinking. It was about 2 years afterwards. I was like, okay, I feel confident I could go now, because if I had gone earlier, I would have lied. I watched, my mom was an alcoholic, and I watched her lie all the time to the doctors. It was, so I have this history of watching people lie to their physician. And so I wanted to wait till I was, had some sobriety under my belt. So I remember when I first went to just general prac, and he or she did, full blood panel. I was like, I need you to do a full blood panel. I didn't have my hormones checked though, but I know, let's do the pap smear, let's do it all. And I remember when I went back to get my test results, I could give two flips about what my triglycerides were. I didn't care that she was like, oh, your weight, you can work on your weight. I don't care about that. Like, just tell me what my livers are. Tell me what my liver is. Like, what are my liver enzymes?
Yeah.
I want to know. And it was interesting. It was the person who was giving me my results was not the person who I saw for my exam, who I had unloaded my whole history to. But I'm sure she could look it up on the computer, but that didn't matter to me at the moment. All I wanted to do was to see what my liver enzymes were. And they were amazing. They were amazing. And I was so excited. I started bawling, like right when she told me. She's like, yeah, but we need to talk about your triglycerides. I'm like, I don't care about my triglycerides. Like, it was that moment. And it reminded me of, just go in and check with your doctor. If you are concerned about your hormone levels, especially if you're premenopausal or perimenopausal, and you're also just gone through recovery, like, have it checked out. Like, if you have the access to do it, have it checked out. At least you have a baseline. That, oh, well, my hormones are really jacked up. Maybe that's also affecting my libido. That could very well be the case too, but don't assume that that's, 100% happening every time.
Yeah, for sure. Go to the doctor. I went to a doctor, and she suggested a lot of the things that you've suggested too. She suggested things like lubricants and toys and all that stuff, because I had complained about my libido after having kids, and so that's what her recommendation was for me. And then as I got older, there was pain during intercourse, and so my most recent doctor had like this other hormone that it wasn't like the hormone replacement therapy. I might have a family of history of breast cancer, so I couldn't have that, but there's other things that they can give you.
Things. Yes.
Yeah.
There's so much out there, and that's the thing that we don't know what we don't know. And so then we start talking to our friends, and that's, again, these conversations. Oh, my friend is on this. She's tried this, and she tried, to talk with your doctor, see what works. And if you don't like what that doctor says, try another doctor.
Oh, thank you for saying that. They say that half the doctors you meet will be below average. I was like, at first I didn't get it. I was like, what? And I was like, well, if there's 100 doctors, 50 of them will be below. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. But yes, go to many different doctors. Go to as many doctors as you need to. Get 2 or 3 opinions. I mean, don't live at the doctor's office, but definitely talk to male doctors, women doctors, and
you'll connect. Just like therapists, right? Just like recovery groups. Right? You don't try one meeting and go, I'm out. Like, I didn't like that one. What we always tell people, try another one, try online, find a group, find people. Same thing with therapists, like, you're not connecting with that one, try another one. Like, I'm not saying they don't care. They want you, a good therapist and a good physician want you to be able to find the person that you connect with. And so if that means trying somebody else, but I think that, we just, a lot of women stop seeing the doctor after they have kids because they have no need for an OBGYN anymore. And so, and that's where we can see like some lower diagnostic rates for screenings, things like that. Because why should I need to go? And men are like that too. Like, why should I need to go? Nothing feels bad. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's definitely checking in even outside of recovery, but in recovery, it's so good to like tell people to go to their doctor and actually get that check. There's kind of a sigh of relief with that. Like, yeah, my liver looks great. Like, awesome. Maybe.
make sure everything is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
so there was a couple other things, a couple of the other questions. So we covered libido, how to get in the mood, getting comfortable with your body. There was one or two that came up around, having had a history of sexual abuse, and
Oh,
that might mean that you need to go see a therapist. But
absolutely.
do you have any thoughts on how to handle a situation where maybe you're using alcohol to sort of disconnect or disassociate so that you could please your partner? Do you have any practical advice for those people who have a history of abuse, who are trying to have a healthy marriage?
I say get a good therapist. Like, I really wish that there was some like magical thing that I could say. I would just encourage anybody who has, you may not you may not uncover that immediately, right? So
Right.
some of these things have been suppressed. Certain things will trigger it, especially now
Mhm.
that you're more sensitive. Things that you may not even that, that you didn't know happened will now start to come to the surface. Trauma is an ugly thing like that. Like, it can come
Right.
out when you least expect it. And I know that you've worked with clients before. I've worked with clients before that just, if you've got a traumatic life experience that has been suppressed,
Yeah.
and you've been suppressing it by consuming some type of drug or substance or addicted to something else, those things they always come back. And it's easy to push them away, and it's much harder to have to face them. And so you, I believe that you need someone to hold your hand through that and to help protect you through uncovering that process. And so that's not something that I don't feel like that is something your husband can help you with, your wife can help you with, your
Mhm.
best friend can help you with. I feel like it's a
Right.
trained professional that needs to be able to support you in that process in dealing with it. And
Yeah.
I think my advice would be just, I will hold space for you.
Right.
And, as a coach, that's not my training. Um, but I will say that to a potential client. Like, when I can tell, when they come to me and I've had this history of traumatic experiences, I really need help with that. I'm like, I honor you. I respect you. Thank you so much for being that. And now I need to tell you that that's not my background.
Refer out. Yeah.
That's not my expertise. I can recommend, here's 5 people I can recommend to you, whether it's, they would need to do some EFT tapping, whether any of those
EMDR is really good for that.
EMDR, whatever that might be, but that's up to them to explore with something else. But I think that that's something that we do well as coaches, is just be able to kind of like, okay, I know this isn't my expertise. Let me refer you to someone else. And I know that they'll support you through that process. So
Yeah, the thing is that those are, as sad as it is, those are solvable problems, and
yeah,
it may take a little bit of time, might take a little bit of work, but those are actually, they say that 1 in 4 women, I heard a statistic, 1 in 4 women has experienced some sort of sexual abuse, and I think in recovery it's probably the opposite. I would say that probably 1 out of every 4 women has not experience some sort of sexual abuse, because when
correct.
we're problem drinkers, we put ourselves in compromising positions and we become dysfunctional in many areas, including sexuality.
Yeah.
And so there are legions of sex therapists and doctors who are specially trained to identify typical triggers and traps. And these people, I have found, are so good at helping you to identify and that's what EMDR is, eye movement desensitization reprogramming. And
Mm-hmm.
so they help you address those experiences and reprocess it so that they can resolve. And when you're not feeling triggered, then you can feel safe with your partner, you can be fully present in the moment, and you can have all that happiness and excitement and euphoria that a good sex life can bring you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that just knowing that the possibilities are out there, and I think, you and I we work along those same lines of as hope, right? We want to be light, and we want to like show women that, you know, it is possible, and don't get stuck in that dark place of I'm just, you know, I'm too messed up and I can't, like, my history is so bad. And, you know,
Right.
it's easy to get stuck there, and just like, we can work through this. You can work through this. Here are some resources. Let's do this. Have you read this book yet? Listen to her podcast. Like, you know,
Right.
there are definitely so many resources out there that I think that we just, by providing that, because again, not everybody talks about this. So the more
Right.
connected you are to seeing these kinds of things and being that referral source, it's just shedding a light on it. It's only going to help more and more women and men, I think, through this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in terms of resources, we'll have a PDF with a list of resources, whether it's books and podcasts
Oh,
and
great.
things like that. So
Good.
we'll definitely make that available as well.
Yeah.
Was there anything that we haven't covered that you feel like would be important to address before we wrap up?
We could just go on and on all day.
I
I know
know,
we
I
could.
know.
I think just trust yourself. Like, you know, recovery's
Oh,
for
that's a good one.
you. Like, it's really about discovering you. It's more self-awareness. It's more self-love. Like, it's really about you. And sometimes it's going to be difficult. Sometimes it's going to be joyful, and just kind of concentrate on that joy a little bit more than getting stuck
Yeah.
in a really dark area.
Focus on what you do want, not what you don't want, right?
Yeah. Present and future, present and future, for
Present
sure.
and future. And look to the therapist for the past.
And exactly, yeah. You got to deal with it. You got to deal with it in order to move forward in a healthy way. Absolutely.
That is what we resist persists, right? So let's
Absolutely.
unpack that baggage and leave it, check it at the door. Well, Cindi, listen, thank you so much for playing along and answering some, giving this safe space to talk about some really important questions that, really don't get talked about a whole lot. I've been around for a long time, and mixed meetings and even women's meetings, it doesn't really feel like an appropriate place to sort of bring up your stuff. And sometimes I feel like in 12-step rooms, it's just the blind leading the blind. So
Sure.
I appreciate your expertise and your experience with working with so many women. So thank you for bringing all of your gifts to this conversation. I feel like it'll help a lot of women.
Great. Thank you. I so enjoyed it. It's fun to
Hey,
talk about.
yeah, it's fun to talk about. And if people want to work with you in the future, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can visit my website. It's cindiroberts.com, and it's Cindi, and then Roberts, Roberts.com. You can find me there.
Easy peasy. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, love. It's so good to
Thank
see you. And I look forward to
you.
talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Arlena. Bye.
Okay, bye.